Before we meet the Z's, before we get channeling, which I have a lot of questions, I think people want to understand a little bit about like the function structure of what's happening on the other side. Now, of course, I'm not asking for the absolute details, but can you share a little bit more about like what you understand? For example, some people think that guides and these types of guidance are future human civilizations that may be 3,000 plus years ahead of us. And there's a whole, collection that are trying to guide Earth in a way to help avoid pitfalls that other civilizations have made. Other people think it's just a collective energy. Do you have a sense of where this information or where these entities' consciousness live, reside, and what their intention is?
Yes. So they have explained to me that essentially, in many ways, they are a higher council from my higher future self, which is true for many of us, as in we have kind of essentially descended into human form from that realm of consciousness. However, they've also explained they are individuals, like some of them have been incarnate on Earth before. Not all of them, but some of them have. But it's more the former, from what I understand, or at least from what they've explained, that we are at this time in history where we are coming out of a kind of quarantine, where we were held apart from our true origins. They often speak about our galactic origins. They say we've been given a story of Earth that is limited in scope, deliberately limited in scope by those who wanted us to be limited. And that we're now in a period of history where consciousness has risen to such a degree that it's all beginning to fall apart. And we are seeing the shadow fight harder to drag us backwards. But we are also seeing consciousness and light rising through more and more of us who are waking up.
That's a lot of what is tackled in Future Human, which we'll do our own version of, conversation with you today and with the Z's. But this notion of we're at a new place for the human body. We're at a new place for the human mind. Relationships are shifting. Our relationship to gender, like our relationship to consciousness itself is shifting. That's part of the evolution that we all seem to be in, whether you call it a collapse of Western civilization or whether you call it, quantum computing, right? Coming to take over, well, the things that it takes over. One of the things before we ask you to sort of get into the zone, I feel like, when you're about to get a massage and the person explains to you what's going to happen, I feel like that's what's happening. Like, tell us what's going to happen next. So will you explain the process by which you drop into this place that is different than this place? Walk us through what the massage is going to be like.
Yeah. Do you want to know what it's going to be like for you or what it's like for me or both?
I'm most interested in you.
She wants to know if she can keep her clothes on.
No, I'm curious if you can just talk a little bit practically. Is there a mantra that you're reciting? Are you going into a meditative place? Are you like saying like, yo, it's time for Mayim Bialik's breakdown? What does it look like?
Great questions. The weirdest thing for me about becoming a channeler was I thought that you surely had to have purified yourself for 10 years. No, really, I really thought you have to be at an ashram and you have to be enlightened. And even though I was spiritual and I was educated at that point, I wasn't those things. So in the same way that I can be sat with you now and I can literally turn my attention to, and I don't do this because I've learned how to live without doing that. But I could turn my attention to them and go, what does Mayim mean? And they would say to me, they would give me an answer. I don't tend to do that when I'm
That's an amazing game to play, to try and help us understand what she's talking about.
Right, but you also, I think, the bigger reason I don't do that is I think by learning from them over the years, as I have, they've got me into a place where I'm more capable of being intuitive in the moment, and I also need to learn my own lessons. So there are times I could go to them and I don't, because I need to figure it out for myself in real time.
Because you have to have an identity that's separate from that relationship.
But the minute I sit down and type, so I could have this morning sat and typed, what's going to happen with Mayim and Jonathan today? And they would have given me a few paragraphs. And invariably, it always works.
But they didn't know I'd do this right now.
They did. They told
Maybe
him.
they didn't know.
But that wouldn't be a concern
Right.
for me. You doing that doesn't bother me. It would be if I had concerns about what was going to happen here.
They would help you
I could go
navigate.
to them and go, I just need some reassurance. Is this all kosher? Are we good? But then as for now, with channeling for you guys, I'll go back to when I first channeled for a group. I remember being absolutely terrified, and I remember feeling so altered afterwards. Now it's got to the point that my main experience of it is, especially because we're probably going to go for an hour or more, I will probably feel a little out of it for an hour or so afterwards. It will take me about an hour or so afterwards to just kind of come back into my fully grounded body, and I will get hot and my armpits will be sweating after about, it depends on how long, but yeah, I will get hotter. Yeah,
And
my
then,
temperature will
so
rise.
once we are having this conversation with the Z's, how do we get out of it? Like, do we say to you, like, cut?
No,
Stop it.
Here's the thing.
Cease.
It's shockingly normal. Like it's
Okay.
like you were in a normally, and this may be different today. Usually, they will say something to you at the beginning. That's normally how it starts. They usually have something to say.
Okay, I'm ready.
And then they will say, what questions do you have for us? And then once or twice when I've done a longer interview, they have stopped it. Like they've got to a point
Okay.
where they've gone, okay, it's time to, and that's usually because of my body. It's not because of them.
They don't have other pressing commitments they need to get to.
No,
They don't double stack their
we cleared
schedule.
the day for you. Don't worry. Yeah.
Do they ever have questions for us?
Good question. I have known them question people, and back when I used to do private sessions, I did them for 15 years. I would work with people intuitively for more than half of them, and then usually the last 20, 30 minutes would be the person and the Z's, and that combo was a good combo. And sometimes they would ask a question.
She has a lot of information that she could share if they wanted.
Yeah, the information isn't that
They don't want
important
that.
to them.
No, I'm not
because
important to them.
information is not. Here, I think we often want to understand things. So for them, no, I've never experienced them.
This is
It's
actually
a, it's
this
a
is actually
unidirectional.
yeah, but this is actually a very interesting point that can help clarify something. Channeling, if I understand, and correct me if you see it differently, you're actually opening a frequency.
100%.
You're actually bringing in, we're using words, but what's actually happening, and why I think you're getting hot like that, is that your body becomes this vessel for an other energy that you may be hearing intellectually something, but what's actually happening is on an energetic level, you are changing in some way.
I believe the function of a channeler is to serve as a bridge for someone else to access their own soul, their own intuition, their own messages. I didn't know that, but now I've done this for 22 years. I have seen, the function of this is to put people into their own intuition. It's not to glorify the channeled being or the channeler. It's not to get super obsessed with the information. Because here's the thing about channeling. It becomes a rabbit hole. Every question you ask, you then get 4 more questions because it's endless. So they will keep answering your questions, but I believe the function of it, in my experience and witnessing people who are drawn to it, is they want to come into resonance with their own intuition, their own soul. And I've noticed people who repeat going to channelings or going to intuitives, they're actually beginning to normalize it in their own life so that they can find their own relationship to it. That's my observation. Yeah.
I think that's a super helpful clarification as we embark on this.
I'm assuming you're used to being observed in this process, right? Like we can look at you.
Oh yeah, you can look wherever you want.
Okay.
I'll have my eyes closed, so
Of course.
I'm not, I'm not aware where you're
Okay.
looking, or so you do whatever you want.
Okay.
And it normally shouldn't take longer than a minute, maybe, for
Okay.
them to start.